Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says a proposal for a new oil pipeline in Canada is highly likely. His words. Former Energy Secretary under Donald Trump, Dan Brouillette.
Pipeline in Canada is good for Canadians. It's good for world markets in that we have access to more supply.
Canada becoming a natural resource global powerhouse is a big talking point on the federal election trail.
Premier David Eby is defending the government's approval of a new pipeline project that will supply natural gas to a proposed floating LNG terminal just north of Prince Rupert.
The supply to get to 12 to 15, we have the engineering know-how, and the demand is there. One of the things that's brought this opportunity back around for Canada.
They thought Canada was just a transit point. Now it is a destination. On June 30th, 2025, the first commercial cargo from the $40 billion LNG Canada project departed Kitimat, British Columbia. 14 million tons of liquefied natural gas bound for Northeast Asia without touching a single inch of American pipeline. That cargo was more than a milestone. It was a message. Prime Minister Mark Carney quietly sent that message with one sentence to his cabinet. The East-West pipeline is now a national project. The wheel is rolling. There is no turning back. YouTube is not the biggest fan of content like this, but we believe people deserve to hear the truth. If you agree, hit that like button and subscribe. It helps us beat the algorithm and keep going. We really appreciate the support. For nearly a century, the United States has relied on Canadian oil and gas to fuel its economy. 97% of Canadian energy exports still flow south. But this time, Canada has flipped the valve. A new corridor is opening, one that does not end in Texas or Chicago, but in Seoul, Tokyo, and Shanghai. And Washington is watching it happen. The vessel Gaslog Glasgow arrived in South Korea in just 10 days. By comparison, US LNG shipments from the Gulf Coast must detour through the Panama Canal, taking nearly double the time. Each nautical mile saved makes US tariffs irrelevant. Asia will account for 60% of LNG imports in 2025, and Canada now sits at the gateway. The LNG Canada project, backed by Shell, Petronas, Mitsubishi, and Kogas, is the largest private investment in Canadian history. Train 1 is online. Train 2 comes next year. Once expanded, the terminal will deliver 28 million tons annually, more than enough to rewrite energy trade flows across the Pacific. What Washington once treated as a friendly source is now a rival terminal, and for every cargo that sails, the leverage shifts. Trump's tweet storms demanding tariffs between 25% and 100% no longer move markets, because Ottawa is now in control of its exports. Every tanker that leaves Kitimat moves the conversation from politics to physics. If US buyers want Canadian energy, they now have to compete on the open market.
Under Prime Minister Mark Carney's leadership, Canada has demonstrated a nuanced strategy in response to US tariff pressure. His patience, calculation, and long-term vision aim not only to protect Canadian workers and businesses, but also to build a more sustainable national economy. However, as Trump continues to use tariffs as a political weapon, the future of Canada,
Well, as you know, it addresses two key priorities for the Carney government. One, trade diversification, which is the new mantra in response to Trump's tariff market. So it fits into that. It also fits into the other objective of Canada becoming an energy superpower.
That is not a threat. That is leverage. Carney has confirmed that a new pipeline from Alberta to the Pacific coast will be designated a national essential project. Timelines will be slashed, delays will be eliminated. This is not a proposal, it is policy. The One Canadian Economy Act has already passed. It creates a single window approval process, bypassing interprovincial bottlenecks and removing the political friction that once paralyzed energy infrastructure. Once complete, the pipeline will reroute Alberta's crude directly to the port of Vancouver. No Midwest refineries, no East Coast processing, just ocean access and options. 3.75 million barrels per day currently flow to US refineries. That figure is now at risk. Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia. These cities rely on Alberta oil. If the flow stops, they will be forced to import Middle Eastern crude at higher prices and longer shipping times. The cost differential is real. Marine insurance, transportation premiums, spot market volatility. Ottawa is not making a threat, it is building an alternative. Carney's approach is different. He has proactively negotiated with Indigenous communities, securing benefit agreements, land rights recognition, and community investment funds. Legal battles that once halted construction are now defused at the blueprint stage. Vancouver will emerge as North America's premier oil export hub. The Gulf Coast? Just another shipping route. EIA data shows Canada exported a record 4.3 million barrels per day to the US in July 2024, following the Trans Mountain expansion. But with the new pipeline, those barrels will be rerouted to Asia, to Latin America, to whoever pays best. Trump's threats of 25 to 35% tariffs on Canadian oil and gas will not work. Once Canada finds new markets, the threat loses meaning. Every new project milestone drops Western Canada select prices just enough to retain US buyers. But Ottawa is no longer playing to Washington's tune. It is writing its own. The United States can produce 13.4 million barrels of oil per day, but much of it cannot move. Keystone XL, Mountain Valley, Constitution, all delayed, all stalled. Environmental lawsuits, community resistance, political deadlock. Meanwhile, Canada is welding its final steel joints. If Canadian oil bypasses the US, Midwest refiners must turn to heavier Middle Eastern grades, adding over $3 per barrel. That means higher gasoline prices. EIA projections already peg average prices at $3.10 per gallon in the third quarter of 2025. A 30-cent increase could follow if Canada redirects supply. American consumers will feel it at the pump. 20-gallon fill-ups could cost $6 to $8 more. Shipping costs will rise. Grocery delivery prices will rise. Every supply chain anchored in fuel becomes more expensive. And LNG? That is a different story. With each cargo to Asia, Canada becomes more embedded in the global LNG supply chain. Kitimat already cuts shipping time in half. A second terminal at Prince Rupert would cut it further, to just 8 days. Houston cannot match that. Trump's Twitter feed may call for tariffs, but markets now follow latitude 54, not Washington. If the US wants affordable gas, it needs Canadian energy. If it wants stability, it must offer respect. Because Carney's strategy is working. It is calm, it is legal, it is effective, and it is here to stay. Behind the scenes, Canadian energy firms are already drawing up blueprints for new terminals, new hydrogen corridors, and new electricity grid interconnects tied to Asian and European buyers. The next decade of Canadian energy will not be defined by pipeline bottlenecks, but by outbound mobility. From Fort McMurray to Vancouver Island, infrastructure is shifting to support global, not bilateral trade. In meetings with Japanese and South Korean delegations, Canadian ministers have begun laying the groundwork for long-term LNG purchase agreements lasting beyond 2040. That means not just capacity, but influence on emissions, pricing, and terms of compliance. And the advantage does not end there. Canada's clean energy credentials, hydropower from British Columbia and Quebec, nuclear from Ontario, and hydrogen from Alberta, give it a layered portfolio the US cannot match. With Washington politically gridlocked, Canada is moving. Already, European and Asian energy buyers are working to standardize import contracts to match Canadian protocols, built on traceability, emissions reporting, and investment predictability. These standards are not just environmental. They are economic. They lock in certainty over decades, something few US providers can promise today. The Canadian model is winning trust, and trust is becoming the new currency of energy trade. Meanwhile, new financial arrangements are emerging. Long-term energy sales are being priced in euros and yen, not just US dollars. These moves hint at a future where energy trade may no longer be exclusively tied to the greenback. The implications are global. If Canada becomes the preferred supplier and those contracts are denominated in other currencies, it could chip away at the petrodollar foundation that has underpinned US economic influence for decades. Canada is not just exporting fuel, it is exporting predictability. In a global landscape marked by volatility and shifting alliances, that predictability is its strongest asset. Let us know what you think in the comments. And do not forget to subscribe to Auto News and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest political economic updates.